Chapter 8, in which Wang Hue meets a friend in need, and the Lau brothers come upon a poor acquaintance. Wang Hue had just come back to the capital and reported his return when his servant brought in the messenger with a congratulatory announcement. "What good news is this, sir?" asked Wang. The messenger kowtowed and presented the announcement, on which was written, "The provincial governor of Kangxi reports that an officer is needed for the prefecture of Nanchang. This is an important post for which an able man is required. And Wang Hue, junior secretary of the Board of Works, is hereby appointed prefect of Nanchang." When Wang Hue had rewarded the messenger with food and drink and bowed before the announcement to express his gratitude to the emperor, he packed his baggage and set out for Kangxi to take up his post. After some days, he reached Nanchang, the provincial capital of Kangxi, where old Prefect Chu from Jiangxing in Chiqing had handed in his resignation on the grounds of old age and ill health, and moved out of the yamen, leaving all business in the hands of the assistant sub-prefect. When Wang Hue arrived, all the subordinate officials paid their respects, after which Prefect Chu called on him, and Wang returned his call. Because there were a few points in connection with the transfer on which they had not yet reached full agreement, Prefect Wang would not take over at once. One day, however, Prefect Chu sent a servant to say, "Besides being old and infirm, our master is rather deaf. He ought to come in person to receive your instructions as to the transfer. But, as it is, he will send his son here tomorrow in his place. He hopes you will help him in all the arrangements, sir." Wang Hue agreed to this and prepared a feast in the yamen for Prefect Chu's son. Just after breakfast the next day, a small sedan chair arrived and a red card was handed in with the name Chu Chin Yu on it. Opening his door to invite him in, Wang Hue saw that his visitor was handsome, distinguished, and well-bred. They exchanged greetings and sat down. It gave me great pleasure to meet your illustrious father," said Wang. "I am sorry to hear today that he is not well. My father is old and consumptive, and so he cannot stand any strain, and his hearing is impaired. I appreciate your concern, sir." "Not at all. May I ask your honorable age?" "I am 37. "And have you always remained with your father?" When my father was a district magistrate, I was still young. I studied in Shantung with the examiner Mr. Fan, whom I helped to look through the examination papers. But for some years now, ever since my father was promoted to Nanching and had needed someone to help him, I have been with him here." "Your father is still in his prime. Why should he be so eager to retire?" "My father maintains that officialdom is a stormy sea, which is hard to endure for long. Moreover, at the time he passed the first examination, he already had a small estate which will provide us with a frugal living, while the humble home of our ancestors suffices to keep out wind and rain. And for diversions he has music and gardening, as well as a few favorite haunts where he can while away the time. So in the press of public affairs he has always longed for a life of seclusion, and now he can realize his wish. The proverb says, 'Don't consult your son on the question of retirement.' However, now I see how high-minded you are. I don't wonder that your father can retire without regret. Soon," added Wang with a laugh, "when you pass the higher examinations, your father will enjoy his retirement even more." "Human worth does not depend upon official position, sir," replied Chu Chin Yu. "My only wish is for my father to return home as soon as possible, so that I can study to please him, for I count this the greatest happiness a man can have." "Admirable indeed," exclaimed Wang Hue. Tea had been served 3 times, and they now took off their outer gowns and sat down to discuss the transfer. Chu saw that Prefect Wang appeared to hesitate. "You need have no misgivings, sir," he said. "During his period of office here, my father has dressed plainly and eaten frugally like an ordinary scholar, so that he has saved about 2,000 taels of silver. If you find an insufficiency of grain, horses, or other supplies, please use this sum to make good the shortage. For my father knows that after serving for several years in the capital, you cannot be wealthy, and he does not want to put you to any inconvenience." Wang Hue was delighted to find him so generous and agreeable. Presently the feast was served, and they took seats at the table. Then Prefect Wang asked slowly, "What are the special features of this district? What can one make out of the lawsuits here? What can one make out of the lawsuits here?" "The people of Nanchang are a rough lot. quite lacking in finesse. As for the local lawsuits, my father paid little attention to them, but let the district magistrates settle all disputes which did not involve important ethical issues, such as marriage and property, for he wanted the people to enjoy peace and quiet. Since my father never looked for profit, I cannot tell you whether there is any or not. Asking me about it is like asking the way from a blind man. With a laugh, Prefect Wang rejoined, "It shows that the old saying, 3 years of good government, 100,000 taels of silver, is not always true." Chu Chen Yu had drunken a few cups of wine, and now, seeing how mercenary the new prefect was, he said, "It was little to commend during my father's term of office. While he was prefect, there were few lawsuits and fewer sentences passed. Thus his secretaries could do pretty well as they pleased. I remember the formal judicial commissioner telling my father that in his yamen 3 sounds only could be heard." "What 3 sounds?" "The reciting of poetry, the moving of chess pieces, and the singing of operas." "Very interesting, upon my word." Wang Yue let out a bellow of a laugh. "No doubt, sir, when you start to carry out reforms, 3 different sounds will be heard." "What 3 sounds?" "The clang of a balance, the rattle of an abacus, and the thud of bamboo rods." Wang Yue answered solemnly, not realizing the other was being sarcastic. "Yes, as servants of the emperor, I suppose we should take our responsibility seriously." Chu Chen Yu was a good drinker, and so was Prefect Wang. They drank toast after toast to each other, feasting until sunset. Then, when all questions in connection with the transfer had been settled, and Prefect Wang had promised to take over, Chu Chen Yu took his leave. A few days later, sure enough, Prefect Chu sent a sum of money to Prefect Wang, who drew up a statement of transfer for him. Then Prefect Chu with his son and family set out on a boat, half filled with books and paintings for Chie Sing. Prefect Wang had escorted them outside the city. On his return, he did as Chu Chen Yu had foreseen and procured an outsized balance. Then he called in all his subordinates to examine them about possible spoils, not allowing them to conceal anything so that all squeeze should come to him. And he checked on them every few days. The big bamboos were now in constant use. Wang Yue had these bamboos taken to his own quarters to be weighed, and when he found that one was considerably lighter than the other, he put secret marks on them. Thereafter he presided in court and ordered a culprit to be beaten with the big bamboo. If the lighter one was taken, he knew that the men had been bribed, and he had the offenders beaten with the heavy ones. Court runners and common people alike were beaten within an inch of their lives, until everyone in the city knew that this new prefect was a holy terror and feared him even in their dreams. And of course, when his superiors knew this, they declared that Wang Yue was the ablest officer in Kiangsi. In little more than 2 years, he was praised on all sides. Just at this time, Prince Ning revolted in Kiangsi, martial law was proclaimed, and the government promoted Wang Yue to the post of intendant of the Nankan circuit, in charge of military supplies. As soon as he received this urgent appointment, he proceeded post-haste to Nankan. Soon after his arrival, he set out in high carriage drawn by 4 horses on a tour of inspection of the various stations, traveling by day and resting by night. One evening, he put up in the public hostel, an old mansion which had belonged to a rich family. When he went in, he saw a placard hanging on the wall pasted with a strip of red paper on which was written, "The horses lead the way." At sight of this, he gave a start, but he took his seat in the hall while the subordinates and runners paid their respects to him. Then he had the gate closed and took a meal. Suddenly a wind sprang up, and the red paper was blown to the ground, revealing the words underneath on the placard. There, written in gold on a green background were the characters, "Ministers in the Celestial Court." Amazed, Wang realized that the oracle was true, and that the 2 days in the sentence 2 days at the office made the character Chang in Nanchang. It was clear that everything was predestined. After he had dispatched his business, he returned to his yamen. The next year, when Prince Ning defeated the imperial troops at Nanking, the common people opened the city gates and fled for their lives. Powerless to resist, Intendant Wang hired a small boat and made off at dead of night. But in the middle of the Yangtze, he was confronted by 100 of Prince Ning's war vessels, packed with soldiers in shining armor. Millions of torches in this fleet lit up Wang's little boat, and an order was issued for its capture. Then, scores of soldiers leapt aboard, discovered Wang Yue in the cabin, tied his hands behind his back, and bundled him aboard their flagship. Some of his attendants and boatmen were cut down, while the rest, to escape being put to the sword, jumped overboard and were drowned. Wang Yue, trembling with fear, saw Prince Ning sitting above him in the glare of many torches. He dared not raise his head. But Prince Ning hastily stepped down and with his own hands untied Wang's bonds, then ordered clothes to be brought for him. Acting on secret orders from the Emperor's mother, said the prince, I have raised troops to kill the traitors by the Emperor's side. Since you are one of the ablest officers in Kiangsi, if you surrender, I will have you promoted. Still trembling, Wang Yue kowtowed and said, I surrender gladly. In that case, said the prince, let me offer you a cup of wine. By this time, Wang had a pain in his chest as a result of him being bound. He received the wine kneeling, draining it at one gulp, then felt better and kowtowed again in thanks. Prince Ning appointed him judicial commissioner of Kiangsi. Hence he had to accompany the rebel army. When Wang Yue heard some of the rebels say that Prince Ning was the 8th son in the royal family, he realized that the musical instruments mentioned in the oracle referred to the 8th prince. So now all the lines had come true. At the end of 2 years, the prince was defeated and captured by Count Wang Shoujin, and his puppet officials were either killed or fled. Wang Yue and his yamen had no time to pack any valuables, but simply snatched up a casket containing a few old books and several taels of silver. Then, changing into blue clothes and a small cloth cap, he fled by night, not knowing in his panic where he was going. For several days he fled on foot and by boat, scared almost out of his wits. Finally he reached Wuqin, a market town in Shiking, where his boat stopped to let the passengers go ashore for a meal. Taking several coins with him, Wang Yue followed the others ashore. Every table in the tavern he entered was full, except for one at which a young man was sitting. He looked familiar, though Wang could not place him. Here, sir, said the tavern keeper. Please sit with this gentleman. Wang went to his table, and the young man stood up and then sat down again with him. Wang could not resist asking where he was from. From Jie Sing, was the reply. May I know your honorable name? My name is Chu Hsian Fu. There used to be a prefect Chu at Nanchang. Is he any relation of yours? He is my grandfather. But how did you guess? So you are Prefect Chu's grandson. I am delighted to meet you. May I know your honorable name and district, sir? This is no place for talking. Where is your boat? At the bank. As soon as they had settled their bills, they boarded Chu Hsian Fu's boat together and sat down. I have met Prefect Chu's son, Chen Yu, at Nanchang, said Wang. Is he your uncle? He was my father. Your father. No wonder that I was struck by the resemblance. But why do you say was? Can you mean that he has passed away? The year after my grandfather retired from his post at Nanchang, we had the misfortune to lose my father. When Wang heard this, he shed tears. Your father showed himself a true friend to me that year in Nanchang, he said. I never guessed he was no more. How old are you now? I am 17, but I have not yet asked your honorable name and native place. Are any of your servants or boatmen about? No, they are all gone ashore. Then Wang whispered into his ear, I am Wang Yue, who succeeded your grandfather as prefect at Nanchang. Young Chu gave a start. I heard that you have been promoted to Nankang, he said. Why are you traveling alone in a disguise like this? When Prince Ning revolted, I fled from my post, but since the city was besieged, I was unable to bring away any money. Where are you bound for now? Where can I go? Poor wanderer that I am. Wang Yue omitted to mention that he had surrendered to Prince Ning. Since your circuit was lost, you can hardly return to the court, said Chu Hsian Fu. But the world is wide, and what can you do without money? I have been on a journey at my grandfather's order to collect some money owed us by relatives in Hangzhou. So I have some silver which I will present to you, sir, for your travels. Then you can find a quiet place and settle down peacefully. He produced 4 packages of silver worth 200 taels, gave them to Wang Yue, who thanked him heartily. The boats on both sides should be starting now, said Wang. We mustn't hold them up, so I will say goodbye. I am under such an obligation to you that, if I am spared, I am determined to repay you in full. He knelt down on both knees. Young Chu hastily knelt down too, and they bowed several times to each other. "Apart from my clothes and bedding, I have nothing but a casket with a few old books in it," said Wang Yue. "However, now that I am traveling incognito, I am afraid even this may give me away, so I shall leave it with you. Traveling light, I shall be better able to escape." When Chu Hsienfu agreed, Wang went straight to his boat to fetch the casket. Then, shedding tears, they took their leave of each other. "Please give my respects to your grandfather," said Wang. "If I cannot see him again in this life, in my next life I shall repay his kindness by serving him as a horse or dog." After they had parted, Wang Yue took another boat to Taihu, where he changed his name, shaved his head, and became a monk. Back in Chiesing, Chu Hsienfu told his grandfather how he had met Prefect Wang. Prefect Chu was startled. "He surrendered to Prince Ning," he exclaimed. "He didn't tell me that. He just mentioned that he had escaped without bringing away any money. Although he is a rebel, he is an old acquaintance of mine. Why didn't you give him the money you had with you?" "I did, sir." "How much?" "I had only 200 taels. I gave it all to him." Delighted, Prefect Chu declared, "You're a true son of your father." Then he told them the story of the transfer. After this talk with his grandfather, the lad went in to see his mother, who asked him about his journey and made much of him. Then he went to his own room to rest. The next day he told his grandfather, there were some books in Prefect Wang's casket, and he took them out to show him. Prefect Chu saw that they were manuscripts of little interest, with the exception of one volume, Random Notes on Poetry by Cao Chi. This consisted of over 100 pages, exquisitely written in the poet's own hand. "This book used to be in the Imperial Library," said Prefect Chu, "and for years now scholars have longed for a chance to read it. This is the only copy in existence which good fortune has thrown into your hands. You had better put it away safely and be careful about whom you show it to." When his grandson heard that there was not another copy of this book in the world, he thought, "Why shouldn't I print some copies in my own name? That would win me fame." He set to work at once to have blocks made, setting his own name as editor under the name of Cao Chi. And when the blocks were ready, he printed several hundred copies, which he presented to relatives, friends, and acquaintances. All who saw this book were so delighted with it that they could hardly bear to put it down, and henceforth Prefect Chu's grandson was known throughout Western Cheking as a brilliant young scholar. Prefect Chu knew of this too late to prevent it, therefore he said nothing. But after that he gave his grandson lessons in versification and encouraged him to write occasional poems with other scholars. One day the gatekeeper came in to announce, "2 gentlemen from the Lau family have arrived." "Your uncles are here," Prefect Chu told his grandson. "Go quickly to welcome them." Young Chu hurried out to greet them. These 2 men were sons of Minister Lau, a native of Huqiao who served at court for more than 20 years and had sacrifices and posthumous titles decreed for him after his death. His eldest son was now the Commissioner of Transmission. These 2 brothers were his 3rd and 4th sons, Lao Feng and Lao Chan, the one a provincial graduate and the other a student of the Imperial College. They were Prefect Chu's nephews. Chu Hsienfu followed his uncles into the courtyard, and Prefect Chu was so pleased that he left the hall to greet them on the steps in person. As the Lao brothers came in, they bowed to him. Prefect Chu raised them up and ordered his grandsons to pay his respects to his uncles, after which he invited them to be seated, and the tea was served. "It is 12 years since we last saw you," said the Lao brothers. We heard in the capital that you had retired. There was not one of us but admired your wisdom. And we see today that your hair and beard have turned white. This shows how arduous the life of an official is." "I was never suited for an official life," replied Prefect Chu. "After serving for many years at Nanchang, without achieving anything, simply wasting government funds, I thought it best to retire. But when 1 year later my son died, I was stricken to the heart, for it seemed to me that this must be my punishment for becoming an official. Our cousin was so brilliantly gifted, who could imagine that he would die young?" said Lao Feng. "Fortunately, your grandson is old enough now to wait on you. He must be a comfort to you." "When we heard of our cousin's death," said Lao Chan, our grief at losing the best friend of our childhood without even being able to say goodbye to him made us nearly distracted. Our elder brother wept without ceasing for a whole day. Is your elder brother happy in his present post?" "His office is not a lucrative one," they answered. "He is just whittling away time with little business to attend to. It was because we found nothing to do in the capital that we decided to come back to the country. After they had rested for a while, they changed their clothes, and Chu Hsian Fu took them in to see his mother. Then he conducted them into the library, in front of which was a small garden furnished with a lyre, goblets, a stove, and some stands. Here he invited them to sit to enjoy the quiet beauty of the bamboos and boulders, the birds in the fish pond, and presently Prefect Chu, who had changed into country dress, came out leaning on a stick to accompany them. A meal was served outside, after which they brewed tea and chatted. When the conversation turned to Prince Ning's revolt, someone declared that his defeat was due to the genius of Count Wang Xiaojin, who had achieved great deeds and averted a calamity. To disclaim all achievement as he has done is most rare, said Lao Feng. To disclaim all achievement as he has done is most rare, said Lao Feng. I see very little difference between Prince Ning's rebellion and that of Emperor Young Lo, put in Lao Chan. But luck was with the emperor, so now he is called Sagious and Divine, whereas Prince Ning had no luck, so now he is considered a rebel and a bandit. That is hardly fair. Of course, it is foolish to judge men by their success or failure, said Prefect Chu. But servants of the throne, like ourselves, should be careful how we discuss affairs of state. This silenced Lao Chan. The fact was that because these two brothers had failed in the metropolitan examination and were unable to enter the Hanlin Academy, they had a perpetual grudge against society. They were always declaring that since young Lo had usurped his nephew's throne, the Ming dynasty had gone to the dogs. Whenever they had anything to drink, they would hold forth to this effect. This was why their elder brother, irritated by such talk and afraid they might get into trouble, had persuaded them to return to the country. After discussing a number of topics, the brothers asked, "What progress is our nephew making in his studies? Has a match been arranged for him yet?" "I will be frank with you," said Prefect Chu. "This is my only grandson, and I have spoiled him ever since he was a child. The truth is that all the tutors I have seen appear to be ignorant charlatans who beat or swear at their pupils on the least pretext. In fact, parents only engage them for their strictness. So, out of fondness for my grandson, I have never sent him to a tutor. When your cousin was alive, he taught the boy himself, and after his death, feeling sorrier for the lad than ever, I brought him the rank of student of the Imperial College. He has not been preparing very hard. He has not been preparing very hard for the examinations, but recently in my spare time I have taught him to write verses as a pastime. For whatever fate may have in store for him, I want him to know how to rest content. He studies to please me." "This is very wise of you, uncle," said the brothers. "As the saying goes, better a virtuous scholar than an unprincipled officer." Prefect Chu told his grandson to show some of his verses to his uncles, and the Lao brothers could not praise them enough. After a stay of 4 or 5 days, they announced that they must leave, and during the farewell feast, the question of Chu Hsian Fu's marriage came up again. "Some of the big families have here sent to discuss it," Prefect Chu told them, "but I am a poor officer, and I was afraid they might demand exorbitant marriage gifts, so I delayed matters. If you have any relatives in Huchao, please look out for me. The family need not be rich." The two brothers promised to do so, and soon the feast ended. The next day, the Lao brothers hired a boat and had their luggage carried aboard. Prefect Chu bade his grandson see his uncles off, and came to the hall himself to say goodbye. "Since you are close relatives, we have been treating you just like members of the family," he said. "I hope you don't take this amiss. When you reach home and visit your ancestors' graves, please mention my name and explain that I am too advanced in years to pay my respects in person anymore." The two brothers listened with grave respect, then bowed to him, and the old man took their hands to escort them outside the front gate. Young Chu, who was waiting at the boat, bowed to his uncles when they arrived and remained on the bank until the boat left. Sitting in the small boat with their simple luggage, the two brothers looked at the mulberry trees which grew so thickly along either bank, and the wild fowl which were crying as they flew. They had gone 300 or 400 yards only when they came to a small creek and saw boats gliding out selling water chestnuts and lotus roots. "During the years spent in the dust of the capital, we never saw such peaceful loveliness," they exclaimed. The sung poet was right who said, "To retire is best." That evening they reached a small village whose lights twinkled through the mulberry leaves on the river. "Tell the boatman to moor the boat," they ordered the servant. "There are houses here where we can get wine to pass a pleasant evening. We will spend the night here." When the boatmen had done as they were told, the Lao brothers drank their fill, leaning against the gunwale and discoursing at random of things past and present. The next morning, while the boatmen were cooking, the brothers were ashore for a stroll. A man rounded the corner of a house and bowed low when he saw them. "Do you gentlemen remember me?" he asked.